Guys, it is Sarah Jane from Access Your True Nature with your love nugget or your daily dose or your mind vitamin, whatever it is that you'd like to choose it to be today. And I'm coming to you a little bit early. Um, I can hardly see out of my right eye today, which is why I've got my glasses on. And I'm wondering, is it the dust? Is it sympathy for my cat who has some health issues going on with his eye right now, or is it just a place where I'm not willing to see or ready to see things being differently on this beautiful equinox energy that's really inviting us to look at what we're not willing to look at, right? And perhaps you can relate to, are you avoiding conflict in your life or worried about rocking the boat, or perhaps you're afraid to disagree with your partner or your boss right now. And how often are you winding up saying yes to things when you really want to say no? And perhaps feeling a little bit of frustration or confusion or agitation about things just being out of congruence for you, that you're no longer aligned with things that are becoming visible to you that perhaps you couldn't see because of blind spots and triggers before. And so much change is happening inside of my shadow dancing class. I just want to jump for joy because some of these things are coming up, and these amazing brave women are really starting to see that they'd rather be brave than good. And as children, I think, especially women, we're taught that we have to give ourselves up and not choose to stay in our truth and live from our true nature. And I just want you to know, that you have the freedom to choose and choose again. And sometimes when you're feeling tied down to a situation or a person because, maybe they feel safe, or we were honoring an obligation that perhaps we've made in the past, that sometimes we feel like we live in a no choice reality to change it. But all these circumstances have sort of led you up to this point where you're starting to see that they aren't true to your authentic self, and that you acting in a way that you feel you should be the good girl in order to keep or make others happy isn't working for you anymore. And I really believe that to be free, we have to rediscover who we are, what our authentic self is, what our purpose map is, and be able to walk away from restrictions or chains that we felt bound to, all the contracts and oaths and vows and fealties and communities and promises in this lifetime and lifetimes before it. Sometimes we come in with ancestral guilt and ancestral mores and moralities, and because we're born into it, we think that we have to hold them in place, which is just a self-fulfilling prophecy of more pain, more suffering, more lack of living fulfilled, happy, healthy lives. And I really want you to just start to take this time in solstice, in the equinox, to really just take some time to have gratitude for just how far you've come, and just what you're willing to do. Whether whether you think you've had enough or not, you probably haven't, and how easy it is to go back into these old patterns, because that's what keeps us safe, even though we know we don't want it. So it lowers our energy and it drains us, and we start to feel like, oh my gosh, there it goes again. And it's really about tracking emotions, tracking how you're feeling in any given situation, so that you don't have to be afraid to let go of the familiar, and that you can start to be willing to receive the new, so that it can come in and replace the old and the worn out stuff that's no longer serving you. And transformation, I know it's very vulnerable to take small risks with great courage, is what I always recommend, is just take tiny steps with consistency every single day, and take care of yourself as you change into new waters which we haven't got a manual to navigate anymore. And remember that everything you do in your life is by your choice, and you are free to choose again. And the next time you begin to think, I have to, or I should, or what's wrong with me, or I should be further along, or why am I still here, and you start to go into this monkey mind stuff of I've got a reminder popping up or not. Okay, there you go. Funny when these messages start to show up on Facebook. So yeah, take a breath and just track your emotions the next time you sort of get into this place where you're in the mind and you're not connecting with the heart and your desires and your wants and want nots, and start to look at how you can start to bring in new ways of transforming pain and old patterns of abuse, whether that's addiction to work or addiction to saying yes or whatever it is for you. Just start to track, what is it that's holding you there? What's the value? What is the payoff that you get for being the good girl? That's something I really knew very much my whole life, was to be the good girl. And if you've been told, to be good, you can't know what bad is. So my mantra for you today is really to welcome new ideas. And you can put your hand on your heart with me if you're listening to this or you're doing it later on. And just say, I welcome new ideas, new opportunities, and new adventures into my life. And I'm choosing that now. And just remember that when you start waking up, you're not numbing down your desires. You're not numbing down that you can't have what you want. And you can't turn away from truth anymore when you become your best truth teller. You can no longer comfort yourself with the old fairy tales and the stories of good and evil, or if I just think positive enough, or if I just start to I love it. My children are playing. What if you could just play more in your truth telling, and know that you can't keep trying to force something that doesn't align with you anymore. The light of awareness can't be switched off. Once you start to wake up and you start to really see, what are my core desires? What is it that I want to create in this one precious life of mine? Things get so much more easier. And I'm not saying easy is a place of choosing easy over growth, because when things are too easy, I don't think we grow. But just to know that you can't hide from yourself. You can't run away from yourself. The life that you're living is raw, and it is uncomfortable, and it is sometimes this huge, big, messy experiment. So you may as well have an adventure and wonder, what grand and glorious adventure am I going to have today from the unknown, from knowing that if you just relax your controls and your controlling mechanisms that haven't really been working for you in the first place, that you can start to turn inward into that ecstatic joy and that bliss of living life on your own terms, and allow that to pass through you and flow through you, and start to go inward rather than looking outside for something that's going to give you a quick fix or a magic pill. Because let's face it, we all know that we want sustainable change, whether that's with your health or your relationships or your business. Change only comes through the place of staying in your truth. And then you don't have to judge yourself, and you don't have to allow yourself to be right or wrong, or think that you have to do things a certain way, and you don't have to blame anyone else anymore either. So, you no longer have this fixed identity of I have to show up in a certain way in order to be liked or in order to fit. And all those places where we go into what ifs, and oh my gosh, that whole old space of feeling like we are going to be cast out or judged or vilified or cut down, which is so common amongst women. And that's a beautiful place to be, when you don't have to judge other people, and you don't have to try and get rid of your own emotions. They're there for you to nurture. They're your sanctuary, and then you really start to create from a whole different space, and you'll feel that aliveness the more and more that you tap into that. All right, lots of reminders showing up here. So that's the dizzy giddiness of little girls that just play because they can, and it is a rebirthing process for many of us in the 9 energy of September, in the equinox, of looking at where are things out of balance, where do I need to practice more mindfulness and more kindness and grace, so that you can let go of all these old things that are no longer serving you, and make way to fill your cup with all the new stuff. And reality is groundedness. You see, dripping with uncertainty is not something that you need to be afraid of. You live at the point of total insecurity and nothing to hold on to, and no concept to bring comfort to a very exhausted mind. And so many people going into that sort of last leg of the year are feeling really, really burnt out and tired. So how can you start to create that sense of deep safety for yourself, that's really deep in the feeling, in your bones? You can feel in your bones, you can feel that fire in your belly, that gives you the sense of safety and being with yourself, being with your internal dialogue from a place that is empowering rather than disempowering. And know that you can start to experience things in a way that make you trustworthy. I love to say to myself, because it's something that I denied for such a long time, that I am a safe, trustworthy, kind, supportive, caring woman. And it starts with me actually living that in the way that I take care of myself. And you don't have to call yourself awakened in metaphysical terms. It's just like there is no ranking. There is just like, I don't have to think of myself as better or worse than anyone. And I don't have to lie about myself in not knowing everything and not having the answers. And there isn't a big fuss about it. Because that sense of self can be a really big handicap and illusion when we're trying to make sense of who am I and how do I fit in the world. So what if it could be as simple as just being so fully awake and so in touch with your authentic truth telling in the stories that you're telling yourself, that it becomes effortless to just embrace who you're being in the moment and just stay there. It's not always easy, I get that, because the old realities have to be shattered into a billion pieces. But as I said before, Leonard Cohen said it so beautifully, that's how the light gets in. And that's what I want. I want to just show you your light, your beautiful spark, and remember who you are beyond the trauma of the stories and the past experiences and the pain in the world, and just start to see that you don't have to control anything. You just don't. And when it gets challenging, that's where support and community are such a beautiful place to be, because you're no longer going to fit into the old systems that have promised so much happiness and delivered very little. And yet, this is the price that we sometimes feel like we have to pay, that there's something that we need to give up, that we're going to lose out or be less than, rather than seeing, how much more can I have and receive in my life from that place of leaving the known behind. And those of you who are listening to this probably relate to little shifts. It takes a lot of courage. I bow to your courage, because it is sometimes a terrifying path. But our love is infinite, and it can't be contained or tamed or defied or defined. And the fruit of our love, it never dies. Love really is everything. The seeds of our truth, they can take root and thrive in the source of our beloved being ourself, right? Our sacred presence is our soul. It's our spirit of who we came here to be. It's our chi or our prana or our life force energy. It's the kundalini. It is our truth. And that's where love begins, in really owning that you are the source of your happiness. You are the light bringer and the light giver, and you can't give unless you actually allow your light to shine in the world and really see that you came here to create a positive impact and give as only you can. That when perhaps you enter a room full of heart and you connect with somebody else's heart, that they spark up and they awaken, because they feel that connection of I see you, that doesn't require words. And that is your vibrational of truth. That is the ripple of your way of loving in the world. That it rises and it falls. Every tide is just like the ocean. But we always come back to our heart. We remember who we are and remember that we're not separate. And that to me is what love is. It's about living your truth in realizing the truth of others. and that we are creating heaven on earth just by being here, just by being together. And that's it. You know, love is there to be held. It's not an object to be holding so closely that people can't receive that from you. It's an invitation. It's a revealing of meaning and a beginning of opening in a whole new way of vulnerability and acceptance of being the witness and of being witnessed in very mutual intimacy. You know, I love the play on words that intimacy is the invitation to look into me, see me as someone that is that's going to make mistakes, that's going to make bad choices, that's going to make things have meaning that just need to be received without the meaning making. And that is the innocence of living in our truth, is to really just face down the fear by moving through it, rather than letting it get rooted and stuck in our bodies and in our minds and in our relationships. And just like children, like my daughter with her friend today, they're playing hide and seek, and you know, we're always taught that the last one hiding wins. And for me, it's just like, life isn't about that. The last one hiding stays hidden in the shadows, hidden beneath the masks, and it's time for you to take the veils off. It's time for you to step out and share your truth with other people from this place of vulnerability, because you're opening the doors and the window of your soul through the soft gaze that I spoke of yesterday, of allowing people to see the raw truth of who they came here to be, which can be sometimes very overwhelming and powerful, because that rush that you get from not having to hold up all these walls anymore and all these heart walls and barriers illuminates every aspect of who you're being and who you're becoming and who you're growing into. Hi, Anjana. And in order to do that, we have to let go of all the old barriers that we've been taught that we have to uphold, all the programming and all the shouldn'ts and should nots and what's appropriate and what isn't, which is so exhausting. And I see that we often find ourselves being seen and embraced fully because we've got warts and all. You know, it's not about trying to pretend to be something that you're not. It's just about unrequited love, of saying, I'm going to love where I am, even though I'm afraid, even though I don't have all the answers, even though I'm afraid that people are going to use this as a weapon of mass destruction against me because I'm speaking from my truth. And that's really what I want, you know, is to bear our souls in a way that is beautiful, that's beyond shame, so that we're no longer muting our voices as women, as a collective, and really standing up for love, standing up for the tribal truths of women that are willing to share their voices in the world, regardless of what other people have to think about them. What you think is not of me is none of my business. You know, you get to choose to stay, or you get to choose to go. And I can totally relate that back to dis-ease, right? Just the opposite of not having ease in our bodies, of how many people are creating disease in their bodies because they're trying to withhold all these other things that are actually unlove, right? That's the opposite of love. It's the unseen side of the parts where I have found meaning in making myself less than. And that exposure, you're right, Anjana. Oh, Tara, I love you, darling. And I know you've been going through a hard time right now. So from my heart to you, I see you. I see you, and I absolutely love you. Even in those parts of pain that just seem so unbearable. It's time to transmute that, you know, just like the clouds that move away from the sun. Exposure isn't meant to tear one open for the sake of being painful. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we're afraid of, is the potency of what it means to feel with the whole heart, to have the full spectrum of and range of emotions, and not get attached to any of the outcomes, which is pretty hard sometimes. So, you know, that truthful expression of who we are, those that align with the energy, are going to come into your world. And the first step for me has always been to come from a place of totally loving the parts that I don't like about myself. So whether we stand in front of our own mirror and embrace all that we are, we come into a place of power when we stop talking badly to ourselves, when we stop self shredding. And that the key to the door, it's been in your pocket all the time. And it starts with, just as we move through equinox, just as we're moving into fall in the northern hemisphere, just as we're moving into a new season in the southern hemisphere of heat and expansion or contraction, wherever you are in that, it's really about letting the veils fall. Allow yourself to track according to the seasons. There's a season for everything, and nothing is permanent, right? It's temporary. So whether you're going through a hard time right now or not, just know that it's there to grow you into the greatest version that you came here to be. And just allow those veils, just allow the skin, just as the snake sheds his skin when it grows too small. We have to take some of these balls out of the swimming pool. We have to make space so that we can allow to see ourselves through our own eyes and our own truth, and see fear as a gift, just like depression is, of what's really down there. And meet yourself when you're ready. When you're ready to create that safety for yourself, then you start to be able to access some of the parts and pieces of trauma from other lifetimes or childhood to come gently to the surface and be held there, so that you can start to dance with your shadows and your light, and really bare yourself, be vulnerable, be the open wound, so that you truly get to live into fulfilling your life and reclaiming your heart in a world that can sometimes seem to be quite heartless. And I see this so much with women that I coach, who always tell me, I can't say no, I have to do it, or there's always some sense of obligation or control, that if I don't do it, it won't get done. So, I want to just say to you that I hear you. I know there's a tremendous amount of pressure to make sure that we keep the well-oiled cog going, but in the middle of a wheel is always the middle, before the spokes, before the ways we give out all our energy. We have to learn to have some devotional practice of loving ourselves and filling ourselves up and nurturing those parts. And I think learning to say no is a really important part of where we're saying yes. And I know it's true that sometimes things may not be done as well as you'd like, or that you just have to keep doing them, or you're going to burn out, or worse, you're going to get sick, unless you can let go of some of these controls of places where you see that there is value in holding on to the old ways that really are not making you happy or feeling fulfilled. And it is just as important to remember a yes, but it's just you can get a lot more out of self-preservation and loving others, being able to love more and give more back when you're loving yourself by honoring your boundaries. And that is the bravery, that's the brave heart, that's the lion energy of allowing yourself to take small risks with great courage and a brave heart. Because I know it's not always easy to change the old habits, especially when you've been rewarded for your goodness of being a good girl, or a great caretaker, or a great mother, or a great lover, or a sister, or whatever it is for you. And this goes back it's imprinted in us from such an early age to give ourselves up in order to be loved, in order to be accepted, in order to not be cast out and alone in the world. So the questions I would ask you are you tired of feeling frustrated or resentful or doing too much? And do you want to do more of what you love and less of what everybody else wants you to do? There's no shame in selfishness. In fact, for me, if we can't be able to give ourselves what we need, put the I into selfism, how can we give selflessly to the others that are showing up, that are asking what we can give to them, whether that's your family or your friends or your clients? So, you know, deep down in your heart, do you know that there is more that you could be doing right now to fully show up in your relationship with yourself first? And how can you give yourself some of that over the weekend? You know, it is your time to connect to you and make what matters to you count. And you can't do that if you're not giving your core desires and your wants a voice, and listening, you know, with a fertile mind, to really listen and honor what it is that deep down in your soul and your heart, you know, are going to make you so happy and so fulfilled and so abundant that you can't help but give generously. And that comes from when you start to look at how you can create more of what you want. And I just wanted to tell you on this beautiful, hot, windy Sunday that just as the seasons are changing, it's a season for change for you. It's time for you to stop beating yourself up. Ease off from where you think you have to be perfect and right and make things meaningful and try to be good enough. You're never going to please everybody. So why don't you start from a place where you can actually be your most pleasurable source of love and bliss and kindness and honoring, so that you can start to feel revitalized and empowered and free. And if you want some help making that shift, you know where I am. And if you are interested in joining the Shadow Dancing 2-part masterclass, it's creating so much change inside the group. I'm thrilled at the testimonials and the insights and the awareness that's coming in daily from these beautiful, brave, courageous women that have actually realized they're done killing themselves in order to fit, and that they're actually going to start to fit life into how they're creating their living. And that's your joy of business. And I really, really, really want that for you. So can you just take a moment over the weekend to really look at how you can start to open yourself up to loving yourself more fully in the space of actually looking at your languaging, looking at the self-dialogue and the self-shredding that you're doing, and flip it around. Flip it around so that you can really start to look at being buttonless, that it doesn't matter what people say, you're going to live in your truth, and you're going to speak from the heart, because it's time to change that, not just for you to come home to your heart, but for us all to heal the separation sickness that's actually killing the planet and killing everything that is so beautiful and available for us to tap into. So I wish you a beautiful weekend, and if you have any comments or questions, or you know someone that might benefit from listening to today's little mind vitamin, please share this link with them. And let me know what's going on in your part of the world, what intentional creativity you're going to step into in being the brave heart of knowing that your heart is wide open and ready to receive. And share that with me, and be the bright spark out in the world. To do what you love with a big heart and give generously, because the world's not waiting for someone like you. The world is waiting for you and your unique talents and capacities to create positive impact and heal the world and create a new earth. So lots of love, guys. See you soon. Bye. Mwah. Take care.